reusable bakeware, molds, trays, mats. You never have to spray or grease them. No harmful chemicals in there, and you can store them all rolled up. But we're gonna get to cooking. So just keep in mind, if you want to change these recipes, if you would use them, if you would add something different, I'd love to hear about it. But we're gonna start by making our curry rice bowls, so sweet and savory, and I'll show you what makes them sweet and savory. But we are gonna make these in the oven. I always cook my rice in the oven or microwave now. I never use stovetop anymore because this is so much easier. I've got my medium perforated baking sheet, and I'm gonna put on a large round mold. So these are really utilitarian molds that you can bake a cake, cheesecake, meat, anything, works great. So I've got my round mold there. My oven's preheating to 375 degrees. We are using basmati rice. Today I've got 1 cup of basmati rice. And the way I make my rice, so you add your rice in here, and you can use a round mold or something beautiful like a sunflower. You can make it in lots of fun shapes, and you just heat your water up in advance. So in this pan, I warmed up 1 1/4 cup of water and 1/2 cup of coconut milk. You can use light or full fat coconut milk. So if you're watching your fat, you'd want to go light. If you don't mind the fat, the full fat coconut milk does add a little creaminess and texture. So I just pour that in with the rice. And one thing I want to show you is something like coconut milk. I almost never use a whole can. So I like to take one of my trays. This is my donut tray, and I just freeze my leftovers. And then I just pop these out and put them in a reusable container. So I'll have a whole bunch of these, and I'll just put those in the freezer so I don't have to buy a whole other can coconut milk the next time I'm using it. So that's just a little tip I wanted to share. I do that with pizza sauce and lots of different things. So we've got our coconut milk, our water, our rice. We're gonna add some of our Savory salt. Some, you might hear this called a gray sea salt. It is harvested in France, and it has a really earthy, rich flavor. So it's our everyday gourmet salt. We do have some flavored salts like truffle salt or lavender salt, but it's our everyday go-to salt. But it does, again, have that really rich, earthy flavor. And our salts come with a refill and a grinder. Those are a good deal because they really do make a big difference in your cooking. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of curry powder here. So this is something, if you know a lot about cooking with Indian spices or you make a lot of curries, you could go ahead and put in even more spices in here if you wanted to. We're going to keep things really simple. So you just stir that in, spoon, fork, whisk, and that's ready to get started. The only thing we're going to add is a bond mat or a lid or a silk pan, either way. And so that's just going to trap in the steam and help that rice cook. I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. And I have to say that because I am always forgetting to set my timer during cooking classes. And I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, I have food cooking, don't I? We're going to start our quinoa in the meanwhile before we get back to our curry rice bowls. So in my medium round mold, so it's very similar in size to the large, good again for cakes and everything. I'm going to set that on a plate because we're going to use it in the microwave, and you still want some stability. Because imagine you had hot boiling water in here and you're like trying to carry it, probably spill it on your feet, which is never what you want to do. Like, that's not the goal. So I took 1 cup of quinoa and I rinsed it. You want to rinse your quinoa, helps get rid of the bitter flavor that quinoa has sometimes. Just gonna get that in there, my mold. I'm going to add 2 cups of water. And we're going to add some seasonings in here. We have herb blends. This is our zesty Mediterranean. I don't know if you can see, they have really big pieces, almost like a loose tea. So it's not like the dust that you would get at the grocery store. Not saying that's dust, but like it's a bigger piece. We're going to add a teaspoon of our zesty Mediterranean. herb blend. We're going to add some of our Savory salt once again. And we're going to add some olive oil. That's optional. Again, if you're watching your fat intake, you wouldn't have to add the oil. I like to, and you can do a regular olive oil, or I'm using one of our olive oil blends, the Herbs de Provence olive oil blend. This is one of my favorites. Just has like a hint of herb flavor. So we're going to go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of that. And I'm going to grab my mini whisk, one of my favorite little kitchen tools, really cute and handy. I'm going to whisk that up. And I'm going to put my octagonal bond mat on as a lid. So I use this a lot as a lid in the microwave, because what I could also do in the same mold is just cut up some cauliflower or green beans, fresh or frozen. You don't add any water and just add this lid and steam your vegetables in the microwave. It takes about 4 minutes, a lot of times. We're going to put that in there for 15 minutes. So I wanted to get that going before we go back to working on our curry rice bowls. So the nice thing I like about this recipe is you start your rice and all the other preparation for this recipe you can do while that rice is cooking. We're going to add some things in a few minutes, but so it takes about 20 minutes to cook the rice, and all the prep is done during that time. So it's not a lot of before and after. And usually I have time to like set the table or wash a few dishes even. So other things we're going to add are onion. So typically I would have started sauteing my onion right after I put the rice in the oven, but I knew we'd be multitasking tonight. So I already cooked my onion, but I'm going to show you how I chopped it. We have a food chopper called the Eco Chop. It's a hand-powered food processor. And I love this. It's probably the best kitchen tool I've ever had, because unlike most bigger food processors or smaller, either way, the food gets stuck on the sides or on the bottom. This has this little spatula blade. I don't know if you can see it, but it allows the food to get kept sweeping up and actually chop. Like I can chop 1 clove of garlic in here if I want to. And because it's hand powered, you have just more control over how fine or coarse you're chopping everything. So if you're making soups and doing a lot of chopping, this is great. If you're making something like guacamole, it's amazing for that. And so I'm just dumping everything in. I cut my onions slightly smaller pieces. I always put one hand on top and then twirl. It takes about that long. And my onion is all chopped up. So easy and fast. The bottom 2 pieces can go in the dishwasher. This top part cannot, because there's a big long cord inside and you don't want that to get saturated. So that makes sense once you think about it. It also comes with a little basket that you can use inside the Eco Chop if you want to like wash herbs or things like that, like a little mini salad spinner. So our onion is chopped. I would be sauteing that with a tablespoon of butter and oil in my pan. You can get it a little brown and golden. And again, if you're trying to go dairy free, skip the butter. You don't have to use that. And we'll add on a little salt right in our onion. Okay, we are going to add some onion, some peas, just frozen peas. I took them out a couple hours ago to let them de-thaw a little bit. They're ready to mix in. Dates. So dates, just about 1/3 cup of dates. I chopped those in my Eco Chop too. Those are optional. This is where one of the sweet elements comes in to your dish. So some dates, and then you can make this vegetarian, or you can add in shrimp. And some vegetarians I know eat shrimp. Some don't. I'm going to put shrimp with it, and I used frozen shrimp. You'll want to make sure that you buy the raw shrimp. If you buy cooked shrimp, sometimes it's easy to grab it by mistake. It's going to turn out a little tough because shrimp cooks so fast. that you don't want it already cooked. And usually I buy the large or the jumbo size. I got the medium because if you've been to the grocery store lately, you probably know what it's like, where half the things you need are not available. So you have to be really flexible. And that's another reason I decided to do some vegetarian options, because the meat sometimes just isn't there, honestly, or sometimes you go and you're like, wow, that's a little bit pricey. So nice having some meatless options in your back pocket. So we're going to go ahead and add some flavor to the shrimp. I'm going to use our cilantro olive oil blend here. And I'm going to take a tablespoon and drizzle that on. And I'm going to take more curry powder. And this is where you can kind of, ad lib a little bit. If you like curry a lot, you can add a little bit more. I'm going to use about half a teaspoon. And I think I've told most of you, if you don't know, I will email you all these recipes tonight or in the morning when we're done. And I'm just going to add a little more of the celery. And we'll toss that around. The shrimp never take long to cook. I usually nestle them in to the rice in the last 10 minutes of cooking. These are even smaller, so they might go even faster. So in just a few minutes, we're going to take the rice out real quick. We're going to add in some of these toppings or mix-ins, whatever you want to call them. One other option, I'm going to go grab something. Is to take your banh mat. This is just optional. So your banh mat's great for toasting, roasting, anything you want to, and toast some almonds, slivered or slices, and some unsweetened coconut. So this is a fun extra topping. You can do the coconut, even though it's unsweetened, it's going to add more of that sweet factor. The almonds are nice, especially if you're going vegetarian and you want a little more protein. It's nice to have a little crunch. So what I did is I toasted the almonds first for 3 minutes on 350, and then I added the coconut in the last 3 minutes. So coconut goes toasty pretty fast, but this is just optional, and you could have this in the oven at the same time your rice is going. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out that rice with my hot pads, which are over here. So one thing to remember with our flexible bakeware is I always want to just grab it because it looks so soft and flexible. Like, don't want to think of it as hot, but it does get hot, especially with that woven glass in there. So we're just going to set this aside for a moment. Going to mix in peas. This is 1 cup of peas, or maybe a little more. I like to go a little heavy on the vegetables myself. About 1/3 cup of chopped dates. Again, those are optional as well. And I just got those at Aldi. You can find those at most stores that you go to. The onion, if you wanted to, if you prefer, you can just top this at the very end when you take everything out. I like to mix it in. You can mix that together. And add my shrimp just kind of on top and nestle those in too. And I'm going to put my lid back on and just put it right back in the oven. So we'll come back to that when it's all the way done. But now let's go back to visit our Mediterranean quinoa bowls. Our quinoa is still cooking. It has about 7 minutes left. This is a dish you can serve warm, hot, or cold. So you can let your quinoa chill and make it for lunch or dinner later in the day. We're going to whip up a little bit of a dressing for our quinoa bowls. And again, everything is kind of globally inspired, nothing super authentic today, but we're having fun with the flavors. You can make a dressing in this Eco Chop. It is really great for emulsifying things, so I use it a lot for dressings because you know how sometimes the vinegars and the oils, they just don't want to blend. That does a great job of it. Another technique you can do, like if your Eco Chop is dirty, is I'm just going to put everything in a jar. I have the juice of a lemon here. And I'm going to use 1/4 cup of olive oil. And you can use your regular olive oil. We have a really beautiful French olive oil with French olives. It's great and classic. I'm going to use this Herbs of Provence blend again, but 1/4 cup of the oil. And we're going to use 1/4 cup of balsamic. You have a few choices here. You can use a traditional dark balsamic. I'm going to use a citrus spice balsamic. It works really, really nicely with Greek flavors, Italian flavors, things where you get your tomatoes in. At first, I was really skeptical, but it's my favorite balsamic that we have to offer, and we have lots of different flavors. So we're going to add in 1/4 cup of that as well. And these balsamics are really nice and thick. I like to drizzle them on things like pizza, and they're thick enough where I don't feel the need always to make a reduction out of them. And then I'm just going to put a little salt. Lavender salt would work here too, because our lavender salt doesn't have like that soapy lavender taste. It's really an herbal taste, and I've used it on pizzas and things like that a lot. And we'll add in a little bit of our pepper. I can find my pepper. Here it is. So this is our pepper grinder. We have interchangeable peppers. I'm just going to grind in some pepper as well. We will shake that up. And I typically don't end up using the whole dressing, so this way I have my leftovers just ready to seal. The one thing you want to do is when you take it out to use it again, you want to let it sit and come to room temperature, because its oils become thick and they're not going to spread nicely on your food. So we have our dressing. This recipe, again, super, super versatile. You can make it anything you want to. You can add chicken, shrimp, lots of vegetables, dairy or not dairy. We're going to add some garbanzo beans or chickpeas. Same bean, 2 different names. I read an article recently about why there's 2 different names, and it's a long story and it's complicated, so I won't even go to that. But I love them. I'm using that little basket from the Eco Shop to just drain those, and we're going to rinse them just to get some of that extra sodium off. We don't need extra of that. And that's all you have to do there. And you can decide what other toppings you might want. I've got some Kalamata olives here, and then some little cherry tomatoes. I'm going to cut those in half. So let's take my knife and cut a few of those. So usually you'd use a serrated knife if you're cutting tomatoes. We have a Santoku knife. It's really nice and sharp, so nice because I can use it on tomatoes. Stays nice and sharp. That's just a few because my family's already eaten, so I'm gonna eat this all for my supper tonight, but everyone else has already eaten. Cucumber, I love adding cucumber in my Greek food, and if you want to, you can cut it in half or in quarters. Slice it, add some of that on top. Feta cheese is really nice on here. Again, I was at the store today or 2 days ago, and there was no feta cheese to be found. So that seems to be normal. So I bought some goat cheese crumbles with an herb blend. I think that will work fantastically. Fresh basil, marinated artichokes, again, chicken, shrimp. You can add so many different toppings in here. And trust me, with the chickpeas, I don't even miss having any meat because the chickpeas have protein. So does the quinoa, which I love about it. One thing I do with quinoa, so the leftovers here, I'll make them for lunch and dinner, but I'll also warm them up and I'll cook eggs in the morning And I will put my eggs right on top of quinoa. I make a sweeter version that I cook with milk and like cinnamon and vanilla, and I will eat that for breakfast. Like sliced bananas up on there, put berries on, and I cook it the same way in the microwave. So the milk, the quinoa, my cinnamon and spices, and that's a really lovely breakfast as well. We have about 1 minute left on the quinoa. So we are going to make a dessert tonight. We can get started talking about the dessert, because even though we're eating healthy, it's nice to have a little treat. I think that's how I survive eating healthy. I try to eat pretty healthy on a daily basis, but if I don't have some little sweet treat at some point in the day, I'm just not a happy person. So we're going to make a small treat. We're making some dark chocolate to make a pomegranate or dried cherry bites. So we are going to start by melting some dark chocolate as soon as our microwave is done with our quinoa. This is our mini round mold. It's really small, and mostly what I use it for is for melting things like chocolate or butter in the microwave. Again, it's got that glass, so things heat up really evenly and really fast. You can mix up an egg and cook 1 egg in here as well. But I like how it's flexible, and I'll show you why here pretty soon. So I'm going to set the cutting board aside for a moment with our toppings. I'm going to put this in the microwave, our chocolate. For 40 seconds at a time, because we don't want to forget to stir that. I'm going to show you our quinoa. So anytime you're using the microwave to steam, you can make rice, quinoa in here. You add water for those things. Something like potatoes, vegetables, you don't add any water, but it still builds up a lot of steam. You want to be careful to lift the lid up away from your face. You see how much steam is coming out of there? And I love, love, love using the microwave for this, because I hate standing over the stovetop. For some reason, that's just like my pet peeve. And so anytime I can cook food and just shove it in the oven or the microwave, that makes my life happier. So I'm just going to give that a little stir to distribute those herbs a little bit better. Yeah, really nice and fluffy. And that's going to wash up so easily. If we were making a cake or muffins today, you would see how easy things just fall out. But I guarantee the cleanup is great, and everything go in the dishwasher. So that's wonderful too. I'm just going to stir this. You want to stir chocolate while it's melting every now and then, because nobody wants burnt chocolate. Okay, so that's going to go back in the microwave. And meanwhile, we're going to zest an orange. We're going to get a little plate. We're going to zest an orange. We're going to put this in our chocolate. So this is our La Petite grater I use for zesting or just grating some cheese that's really fine. It has this guard cover so you don't hurt yourself on it, but then you can put it on the back to help catch the zest. So we don't need a lot of zest. Like a teaspoon is enough. You can use this as optional, but I like how much flavor it gives. Our timer's going off for our rice. I'm just going to leave it in there for a couple minutes while my assistant turns off the timer. Check on my chocolate. Need a few more seconds there. We'll do a little bit more zest. So you might have noticed this mat that's been underneath me the whole time. It's called a roll pat mat. And ideally it's for rolling out doughs. So it sticks to your counter, but then the dough doesn't stick to it. So you don't have to add all those extra flours while you're making pizza dough or cookies. And lots of times I just put it out in front of me because I know it's clean and it's a nice work surface I have, that I don't have to worry about like what kind of cleaners have been on it or what the kids have been doing that I didn't know about. Because sometimes we have like weird pickle juice experiments, things like that. Okay, so this is nice and melty. So this is like the easiest little dessert ever, whether it's just for yourself or for company. This was 6 ounces of dark chocolate, and I used the Ghirardelli. We're gonna put a perforated baking sheet underneath our mini muffin tray. So usually I use the medium sheet. This is a large sheet. This is how it compares. One thing about the large is nice because you can fit 2 some things, not everything, but really versatile, especially if you are cooking for a family. So this is our mini muffin tray. I'm going to use this mini round as like a spout because it's so flexible. I can just pour chocolate in the wells. That's really easy. And I have some already made, so I'll show you, because after this, we're going to refrigerate it for a little while. If I was going to keep going, I would take my spatula and scrape that out. But for sake of time, I'm going to skip that part. We'll see, maybe someone will look that up later. Who knows? Hopefully not, but you never know. So pomegranate arrows work really nicely here. I couldn't find those at the store. I checked a couple different stores. So we're going to use some dried cherries, which are one of my family's favorite snacks. I snip them in half with my kitchen shears. With dried fruit, you do have to be careful because some of it has added sugar. It's really easy to see on the nutrition facts whether it has added sugar or not. This does have added sugar, so we're just going to use a little bit. And I'm just going to drop about 2 halves in each little mini muffin well. And it doesn't even have to be even because we're going to add a lot of different things here. So there's some cherries, some chopped nuts. I love nuts. I love walnuts, pistachios, pecans with my chocolate. And this is nice too because you can do nuts like in half of the chocolates, but you don't have to do them in all the chocolates. And you just sprinkle those on. And then we're going to take our orange zest. And we're going to just sprinkle some of that on. Okay, and the last ingredient is going to be some sea salt. So you might have a sea salt that you love. I'm using a flake sea salt that we sell called Natural Crystal Flakes. And it's really big pieces, so big that I usually kind of crumble them up with my fingers just a little bit. And this is a finishing salt, so you wouldn't mix this in with something you're cooking, but roasted vegetables or desserts, it's nice to finish off. And we also have a citrus salt in these big flakes as well, which is really nice, especially for roasted vegetables. So those are done. So easy. I'll pop them in the fridge. I'll do that later. Here's the batch I made earlier. So I made these in my classic muffin tray, and seriously, they just pop out. It's so easy. So in my mini muffin tray, I'd have, like 1 or 2 of these. Maybe even a bigger tray, I'd have 1 or 2. And then you can just serve these with like a little bit of fruit and some nuts, or again, whether it's yourself or company, and they really do feel like an indulgent special treat. And here is the dirty pan. I don't know if you can see, but like nothing sticks to them. And if something did, it's so nice because you can, again, put these in the dishwasher, but if you're washing them, like if you need to get to them, you can just like turn these inside out and really wash them so easily. So there's our dessert. We'll put some finishing touches on our main courses. Okay. So here's our rice. I'm gonna be careful again. Stir it up a bit. I'm just gonna let that sit for a few minutes like you do with rice. You take it off, let it sit for a couple minutes. Put that aside while we make up our quinoa bowls. So none of this tonight is rocket science, nothing super hard. It's just different ways of making some basics that make it really easy and versatile, and just give you some more options. And then again, the rice, the quinoa, you could make it as a side dish using these same exact methods. I love adding the herb blends into the quinoa before you cook it because it gives it a really nice flavor. So we're going to add in. Things always get a little hectic by the end of the cooking class because I'm trying to remember where I put everything. Trust me though, this I've gotten better over time. So I'm going to add our little tomatoes, cucumber, chickpeas, I had a lot of chickpeas. This will be my supper tonight. I'm looking forward to that. A little bit of the goat cheese crumbles. Another nice thing about these recipes is they're not only gluten-free and vegetarian friendly. I feel like when I am entertaining lately, I always seem to have friends or guests who have some kind of food restriction, whether it's gluten-free, dairy-free, or vegetarian. So I like having recipes I can go to when I have those friends over, even if I don't have those same food restrictions. And we're just going to drizzle some of that dressing right over there. And I wish you could taste this dressing. It's really good. I love the citrus spice vinegar. If you're feeling lazy and you just don't want to make the whole dressing, just drizzle some of the vinegar over it at the end and you will not be sad. So that is beautiful, it's colorful, and really, really healthy. So that's nice. We'll get our shrimp bowl going. I'm going to set this aside. In an ideal world, I'd let that shrimp set for just a couple more minutes, but that's okay. I'm going to dish it up, a bowl. Shrimp, peas, everything, and I'm going to top it with a little coconut and some almonds. And there we have another meal. As we cooked 2 whole meals and a dessert. And I don't think, no, it didn't take long at all. And I was chatting. So we all know that if I wasn't, we would have all happened a lot faster. So at this time, does anybody have